I need to treat that wound. You're bleeding out. No one touches a Keth'ari warrior, human. Then give me permission, because I'm not watching you die.
The distress beacon came through at 0300 ship time, when the corridors of the Varanis 4 were quiet and most of the crew was sleeping. Sergeant Dax Merrow was not sleeping. He rarely did anymore. He sat in the medbay, reviewing old case files by the blue light of his scanner screen, when the alarm cut through the silence like a blade. He was on his feet before the second pulse finished. The signal was faint, broadcasting on a frequency so old that most modern ships wouldn't even detect it. But Dax had modified his receiver 2 years ago after a mission where a stranded pilot had died because no one could hear her calling. He had never forgiven himself for that. He had never stopped listening since. He pulled up the coordinates. Something was out there, drifting between star systems in the cold dark, a ship, damaged, barely holding together. He woke the navigation team, and within 20 minutes the Varanis 4 had changed course. What they found when they arrived made even the most experienced crew members go quiet. The vessel was Keth'ari. That much was obvious from the angular design and the deep black hull plating. Keth'ari ships were built like weapons, narrow and aggressive, designed for war rather than comfort. This one had clearly been in a fight it nearly didn't survive. Half the hull was scorched beyond recognition. One engine was completely gone, sheared off at the mount. The other was barely flickering. Emergency power only. Life support holding by the thinnest margin possible. One life sign inside. Dax took a small team through the docking bridge, but he told them to wait at the entrance. Whatever was inside, he would go first. That was always his way. The interior of the Keth'ari ship was narrow and brutally functional. No decorations, no comfort. Nothing that wasn't designed for a specific purpose. Cables ran along every wall. The floor plating was scorched. Somewhere deeper in the ship, something was still sparking. He followed the life sign, reading down a short corridor and into what appeared to be a cargo hold converted into a makeshift rest area. She was sitting on a metal crate. Even wounded, even exhausted, even alone in a dying ship, she sat like a throne had been placed beneath her. Her posture was perfect. Her spine was straight. Her chin was slightly lifted. Long blonde braids fell across one shoulder, their ends singed from whatever explosion had nearly taken the ship apart. She wore dark segmented armor that fit her body like it had grown there, layered plates, shoulder guards, everything designed for a warrior built for war. Her ears came to subtle points. Her eyes, when they finally turned toward him, were a deep amber gold that caught the dim emergency lighting and held it like fire. Just below her left shoulder plate, through a crack in the armor panels, dark blood had dried in a slow trail down toward her collarbone. Fresh bleeding still seeped at the center of the wound. Dax stopped a few feet away. He held up his medkit, so she could see it clearly. "I'm a medic," he said. "My name is Dax Merrow. I'm not a threat." She looked at him the way a hawk looks at something far below, measuring, calculating, entirely unbothered by what it sees. "I know what you are," she said. Her voice was deep and measured, carrying the weight of someone who chose every word deliberately. "I heard your ship dock. Then you know why I'm here." He nodded toward her shoulder. "That wound needs attention. I am aware of my wound. It's still bleeding. I am aware of that also." He almost smiled. Almost. "Then let me help." "No one touches a Keth'ari warrior," she said. Not angry. Not threatening. Simply stating a fact as old as her civilization. Not without challenge. Not without permission given freely. Dax crouched slightly, lowering himself so he wasn't looming over her, a deliberate gesture, one he had learned long ago when dealing with patients who were frightened but too proud to show it. He looked up at her rather than down. "Then I'm asking," he said quietly. "Give me permission. Let me help you." The silence that followed was long enough that he counted his own heartbeats.
8, 9, 10.
She studied his face. Whatever she was looking for, she seemed to find enough of it to make a decision. "You have courage," she said finally. "For a small creature." A pause. "Do what you must, medic." He moved carefully, pulling back the edge of her shoulder armor with steady hands. The wound beneath was worse than it had looked from a distance. A plasma fragment had driven deep into the muscle just below the collarbone, and the surrounding tissue was already showing the beginning of an inflammatory response. On a human, this would have meant serious intervention. On a Keth'ari, he was working partly from field manuals and partly from instinct. He worked in silence for a while, cleaning the wound methodically, his scanner running continuously to monitor her biological responses. She did not flinch, not once. But he could feel the controlled tension in her body, the iron discipline of someone who had trained for years to refuse pain any power over them. "What is your name?" he asked, more to build connection than to fill silence.
"Zaara," she said.
"Of the Keth'ari Vanguard. Were you alone out there, Zaara?"
"A beat."
"My unit was destroyed." Flat. Factual. The grief buried so deep it barely changed the surface of her voice. "I'm sorry." "Sorrow changes nothing," she said. But there was something in the way she said it. Not harshness, but the exhaustion of someone who had been telling themselves that for a very long time. Dax placed the cellular regeneration patch carefully over the deepest part of the wound, pressing gently to seal the edges. He felt her breathe, slow, controlled, and then he felt the moment something shifted. Some fraction of the grip she kept on herself released. Not weakness. Just the body finally accepting that someone else was holding the weight for a moment. "Your healing biology is remarkable," he said honestly. "The patch will hold for 48 hours. After that, your own system should complete the repair." She looked down at his work, studied it the way she studied everything, thoroughly, without hurry. Then she raised her hand and placed it on his shoulder. Firm, deliberate. A warrior's acknowledgement, the kind exchanged between equals who have survived something together. "You are better at this than you believe," she said. He looked up at her. "How would you know what I believe?" "Because you checked your scanner 4 times when once was enough," she said. "You are careful because you are afraid of failing. That is not weakness. That is the mark of someone who understands what failure costs." Dax was quiet for a moment. In 7 years, no one had ever said that to him. Not like that. Not like it was simply true and required no softening. "Dax Merrow," he said finally, reintroducing himself properly. "That's my full name, in case you want to remember it." Zaara stood. Even wounded, she filled the room. She looked at him one final time, and in those amber eyes he saw something that had not been there when he first walked in. Not warmth exactly, but the door to warmth, cracked open for the first time in a long while. "I will remember Dax Merrow," she said. "The small human who asked permission." She walked toward the corridor. At the doorway she paused, and for a single moment, she looked back over her shoulder. "When I have healed," she said, "I will find your ship again. There is a debt between us now. The Keth'ari do not leave debts unpaid." Then she was gone. Back straight, braids swaying, armor shifting with each powerful step, walking like the warrior she was born to be. Dax sat alone in the cargo hold. The emergency lights pulsed amber. The ship groaned around him. He looked at his gloved hands, steady as always, and slowly pulled them off, one finger at a time. 7 years. Hundreds of patients. Dozens of species. He had never once expected to be thanked by someone who made it feel like being knighted. He smiled to himself in the quiet dark. He had a feeling this was not the last time he would hear the name Zaara of the Keth'ari Vanguard. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, he was looking forward to what came next.
The end.